Hello, future scientists. So, here we are at the end of science fair, and you are almost done. You're like 95% of the way there. So, by this point, you have done your research plan, you designed your project, you carried out your trials or your experiment, you got your data. Hopefully, you analyzed your data, and now you're ready to write your final conclusion. So you should be able to see the paper that I'm presenting. Your teacher's going to share this with you, just so that you have it. And so what you're going to do to write your research, your conclusion paper, is you're going to go to Google Drive. You're going to open up a blank Google Doc. You're going to title it Your Name Conclusion. You're going to make sure that your font is Times New Roman and it is 12. So what do I mean by that? If you look over here, there's this button that says font, and you click on that. And these are alphabetical, and you just scroll down until you find the one that says Times New Roman. And then you're going to click on here. Then you're going to go over here to the font size, and you're going to make sure that it's on 12. You want yours to be on 12. Your paper is going to be double spaced. It must be at least one full page. But given all of the things that need to be on there, it's probably going to be more than one page. But it needs to be at least one page. We'll talk about the bibliography at the end. And so I'm going to give you a rundown of what is supposed to be included in your conclusion paper. And remember that each bullet point, each topic that I talk about is worth 5 points. Each bullet point that I talk about should be its own paragraph. It's also important, because you're writing a scientific conclusion paper, that you use proper spelling and grammar. Guess what? The computer does this for you. When you're typing your information, and you see those little blue lines or those little red lines that underline things, all you have to do is click on that line, and it's going to tell you exactly what needs to be fixed. In most cases, it will fix it for you. All you have to do is click on it. So those lines are your friends. Don't ignore them, okay? So what's supposed to be on this paper? The first thing that's supposed to be on there is an introduction, a brief background of information about why you chose this project or why this project is important. You already have this. Remember on the research plan where you did that first little box that I said was your rationale or your background? All you got to do is copy that and paste it here. Paste it for your introduction. It's already done. Just make sure that you can copy and paste your own work, but make sure that that work that you're copying is not someone else's work. Make sure that you've put it in your own words. The second paragraph, and this should be, your introduction should be 5 to 7 sentences. Okay, so I'm going to put that here. 5 to 7 sentences. Not too many, but just enough. The second paragraph should be your materials and methods. Now, I know that we did this in the research plan, but in the research plan, you listed out your methods, your procedures step by step. That is not what I want here. I want basic 5 to 7 sentences. What kind of things did you use, and how did you carry out your experiment? You don't have to list it out in steps. You just have to tell me basically, how did you do your experiment? Okay? And again, this is 5 to 7 sentences. The next paragraph, paragraph number 3, is going to be your results, your actual results. What actually happened over the course of all of your trials or your tests? Did those results support your hypothesis or fail to support your hypothesis? Now, it's important to note that this section is for experiments only. This is only for controlled experiments. because you had to write a hypothesis. And so I want to know what the actual data told you. And remember that it's okay if your hypothesis is what you would call incorrect. In science, we expect the hypothesis to not be supported by the data. And that's still a valuable experiment because we still learn information from that, right? So you're going to tell me what your overall results were and whether your hypothesis was supported or not. Now, if you did an engineering project, you didn't have a hypothesis, you had an engineering goal. So you're not going to talk about your hypothesis. You're going to talk about this next section here. Was your goal achieved? If not, what prevented it from being achieved? Did you have to make any modifications to improve your project or your product that you're designing? So you designed a product or you built something and you had to test it out to see if it works, right? And maybe it didn't work. And maybe you had to change a couple of things to make it do what you designed it to do, right? To make it perform the way that you wanted it to. That's where you're going to talk about that. Okay, this paragraph. Any issues that you had with the design process, you're going to talk about here. So this, you're each, whether you did an experiment or you did an engineering project, you're going to have a results paragraph. You're just going to be talking about different things depending on what you did. The very next thing that you're going to do is you're going to include your data table. So on your research plan, no matter what kind of project you did, you had to have a data table. Whether you were doing a controlled experiment or you were engineering something and you had to do test runs to see if your product performed, you have a data table. You're going to take that data table, copy it, and paste it in your conclusion paper. That data table has to be there. I have to actually be able to see your data. Now you can very easily take that data in Google Sheets and turn it into a chart or a graph or some sort of visual representation of your data. If you don't know how to do that, no worries, because I'm after school every Tuesday and Thursday from now all the way up until December. If you want to come to after school, I will more than gladly sit there and help you and show you how to create a chart from the data that you already have. So you will get that link from your teacher if you haven't already. I'm sure you have. You just come to after school and we'll work all that out. So you have to have a data table. If you want to include a graph, I will give you 10 extra credit points just for having the graph. And like I said, the graph is really, really easy once you know what you're doing. It takes like 2 minutes. Okay, the next paragraph is going to be your discussion. And so basically this is where you talk about the overall process of your experiment or your engineering design. So based on your results, what did you discover? What did you learn? What surprised you? What were the sources of error? And so when I say sources of error, think back to when you did your project and think back to something that went wrong or something that didn't go the way you expected it or any mistakes you made. We're human. We make mistakes, right? So there may have been mistakes that you may have tried to fix or tried to I can't think of the word for it. It's late and I'm tired. I'm sorry. But there may have been mistakes that happened that you tried to compensate for, right? So that's where you need to talk about this because some of those may or may not have affected your data. And so it's okay if it did. You just need to be aware of it. So anything that you think may have had an outside influence on your data, that's where you're going to talk about this. Then you want to talk about, did your results lead to more questions or possibly another experiment idea? Okay, so I thought this would be the outcome, but actually this would be the outcome. And that's really interesting because now I could do a project to determine that second outcome that I wasn't expecting. So basically, whatever you did, does that lead to more questions? A lot of times in science, when we're looking for an answer, we end up coming up with more questions than actual answers. So that's what you're going to put in this paragraph. This paragraph should be 7 to 10 sentences. Okay. Last paragraph is your conclusion. This can be a very basic paragraph, right? 5 to 7 sentences. Why does this project matter to me? Why should I even bother to look at any of this, right? What is the overall point of your project, and how does this project relate to the real world application? How does this relate to me in my everyday life? That's what you're putting in this paragraph. Your final page, and this needs to be on a completely separate page, is your bibliography. And the good thing about that is that you already have this information. It's in your research plan. So all you need to do is go to your research plan, copy the sources that you already put on your sources page, paste them here on the last page of your conclusion paper, and you are done. Once you're done with all that, and you've checked your spelling and grammar and your paper's good to go, you're going to click on share, and you're going to email it to your teacher. And that's how you're going to get your grade for this paper. And again, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to email me. And remember that there is always after school. All right, I'll see you in the next video.